Hi, Leila. I think you can hear us as well now. Good you're here. Hello. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Good you're here. Hi, Anna. That's better. Thank you so much. And I think Chen, good you're here as well. Bonsoir.
Bonsoir à tous, depuis le Bénin, from Benin.
Very good. I'm afraid my French is not good enough to say more than bonsoir à vous.
No problem. And then we can also try to play music from Benin when the colleague finish his music.
Oh yeah, please.
If you want to, while we allow the people in, feel free to play some music from Benin. We'd love that.
Yes, I will play guitar for you. I'm coming. I'm coming.
Thank you so much. Yes, we're just, it's the top of the hour. We're just waiting for everybody to connect. And it seems like we're getting a special treat. Some guitar music from Benin. Thank you so much. By the way, if any of you also plays an instrument and wants to share, feel free to do so. This is a campfire session. So it's not very formal. It's meant to be a pleasant experience. Although, of course, in times of climate change, you may wonder if a campfire is the best analogy for having a good time. In the end, it is burning fossil fuels, or not even fossils, just carbon-based fuels. People are joining us bit by bit. I'd say we give them a minute more. How's the guitar going? There you are. Oh, you do need to unmute, otherwise we can't appreciate it. Fantastic.
Can you hear me? Aole manake ne wasum andulene. Aole manake ne wasum andulene. Andulia yela tomasi makani lele kandulene ta. Andulia yela tomasi makacha esota. Ulente palo lamto, lala ukakesi, makala wenale, ke andulyeneta, malakisna, 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 yelem, yelem, yelem yo, yelem, yelem, yelem yo, yelem, yelem, yelem yo, yelem yo. Yelem, yelem, yelem yo, yelem,
This is so
yelem,
climate change, like talk.
yelem, yelem, yelem yo. Yelem yo, malakisna, 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 malakisna. Yelem yo, yelem yo, yelem yo, yelem yo, yelem yo, yelem yo. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful, and we couldn't have started this campfire session in a better way, I think. Welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this affiliate event in the Culture for Climate conference that is happening this month in Cultural Heritage Climate Week, a moment where we look at what the arts, culture, and cultural heritage can do in the climate emergency that we're going through right now. My name is Jasper Visser, and together with Merlijn Twaalfhoven, who only a handful of you have heard play the piano before this beautiful song all the way from Benin, is my co-host for this evening. Just a little bit of housekeeping. You can see there's a recording going on. We're capturing mostly for our own note keeping, but we may publish this on the website What Art Can Do. If you don't want to be there, drop us a note in the chat. Let us know. We'll cut you out. We'll make sure that you don't end up there, as well as if you feel like you're sharing something that is, you know, for this crowd only, let us know, and we'll make sure that we pause the recording and that doesn't go beyond, let's say, the walls of our current Zoom. Furthermore, we're going to work in breakout sessions. We're going to make most out of the virtual experience that we're having right here, playing the guitar if we want to. And we're very grateful for the opportunity of the Culture for Climate event, for this opportunity to welcome you to, I think, what is our first What Art Can Do public event. You're here at the beginning, we're sold out, and we're incredibly honored, and we feel very humble that you're all here and you're all with us here today. I'll explain a little bit more what we're going to do later on, but first I want to say, give the floor to Merlijn to say hello, and also frame a little bit the conversation that we're having here today.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Very nice and exciting to see faces from different sides of our planet. I hope after this hour and a half, we will maybe find one or two real practical connections between us, or we will find an intention inside ourselves to develop or do something that we didn't do today or yesterday. I hope we really can help each other in finding this next step. We will, of course, use the time to think of the big story that we're talking about, the role of artists in this huge topic of climate change. But I'm also really looking for ways to make that practical. And I'm a composer of music, so I come from the classical music world. I studied in Amsterdam. I have my viola, and I work with choirs and orchestras. But really soon I felt the power of music outside of the concert hall, inside communities, inside large buildings, even inside places of nature. And I felt that music is not so much just a performance of something beautiful that you want to bring. It's also an occasion to come together and to be attentive, to open your ears and to be open for the beauty that's around you. And very often, I was not the person who could design that beauty. It was sometimes the sky or the sound of the birds or just the moment, you know. And of course, we made music, but also it was the complete experience, being together, being there. It was actually the artwork. So that started as maybe a small discovery of my own role, being not decomposer, but maybe more someone who is an initiator of an event, a moment in time, and I felt responsible for the experience of everyone who was present there. So that was a start of a journey when I saw art as really a great way of communication and a great way of connecting people and a great way of bringing people together. So, and that's also why I believe art has a big role to play in the current time, where we can actually see the whole problem of climate change as a topic of disconnection. The fact that we disconnect our economy from maybe the well-being of people, of animals, of our planet in a whole. And there is disconnection on many levels in societies, between East and West, the North and the South, you know, between cultures, between religions, you name it. So I feel we can have a big task, creating connections. So, well, looking forward to explore this a bit tonight. Yeah.
Maybe, Merlijn, we can also, to get everyone involved, start with a little connecting amongst ourselves. We started with some beautiful, well, first piano and then guitar music. We all have our one instrument with us right now, or at least two, our hands and our voice. And maybe it would be good if we all unmute and we try and clap in the same rhythm. And then at a certain moment, they'll count down from 3 to 1. And on the 1, we all say good evening in our own native tongue. So we can see if our microphones work and we can create a little bit of a connection amongst us, because we're going to work together as well. Do you think we can manage? I think we can, right? Let's try. Let's first find a rhythm that all works for all of us. All right, 3, 2, 1. Goedenavond allemaal. Thank you so much. Merlijn, back to you.
Okay, well, great. Before we start to work, the whole topic of art and the relationship with climate change, I think it is full of potential, but the artworks, I couldn't actually think of a good example. So that might be also what we like to explore. Do we have examples of the role of art that is really helping us relate to this huge topic of climate change? The fact that it's so big, we cannot see it. It's a hyper object. And can we find a way to relate to this huge hyper object? I like to show you a few minutes of a performance that I don't say it's successful. I just want to show you my attempt to deal with climate change as a composer. And I thought we are always, well, in the news, in the media, we're talking about measuring the temperatures or the sea level, all things that are measured in very small bits that have a disastrous outcome. You know, if 1 or 1.5 centigrade, what does it mean? But still, it's a disaster for the life on the planet. So I translated the temperature data from the Northern Hemisphere which was since 130 years measured. And these data, I translated it in sound. And together with a children's choir, we sung the last 130 years. So I'll show a little bit of what happened in the concert hall, and you can listen. So the children sing the tones, and this is all like a century ago, and it's quiet music. The children are all around the audience. And then if I skip to the 2 more minutes, here you hear more intense, more high, and we're the year 2000 now.
Yeah.
In 2010. So there was like the end of the show. I mean, I could compose real music about it. It was sounds. It was, and it felt, yeah, really crazy. It was a few minutes. Then it was really a bit boring music, and suddenly it became higher and higher. And the children couldn't sing the last notes. They were almost out of reach. So they were also out of breath. And well, it was an experience and a way to translate like an abstract world into something physical, something that we can hear, something that we can see, something that we can also physically relate to. So maybe one example, at least, of an experiment that I could do.
Thank you so much, Merlijn. We're going to look for more examples with you, and whenever Merlijn talks, you'll get beautiful stories. Whenever I talk, you'll notice that it's structured and formal. So you can mute me if you feel like I should shut up. What we're going to do with you, or what we're going to try to do with you, is break out a couple of times in small groups and try and answer this big question: what can art do for the climate emergency? What can art do to make us aware and to make us act and to make us respond and feel ownership of these big challenges that we have when it comes to the climate? And we're going to break you up in random little groups every time with a specific question. A question that you may want to talk about from your own experience, or maybe the experience in your country, or the people that you've worked with, or artists or artworks that you know about. And then we bring you together again, and we try and share these. And little by little, what we do is move from some examples, some experiences that we had about art's relationship to the climate crisis, to later on, near the end of our campfire session, recommendations or a view of what can art do actually in the future to make sure that we take climate action, and that the climate in our planet and all the topics associated with climate change and climate injustice are dealt with or addressed as much as we can, also from an art perspective. just for your information, what art can do, we'll repeat that over and over again. What art can do is a new platform where we try and look at the role art plays in all of today's big challenges. It's very, very, very new, but we really hope also to get a little bit of a sense from you for the sort of like projects that we can showcase there, to show the world that art has a role to play in the great challenges of our time. And for us specifically, I know this is two men from the Netherlands speaking, but for us specifically, having traveled the world, we know that this art comes from all corners of the world. And maybe especially from the global south and other minorities that have been excluded from the art debate and the art world for a very long time. So this is not what Western art can do for the climate, but what we all as a global art community together can achieve for the climate. Of course, we also break you up in little groups, because then you get the actual chance to chat like we would have around the real campfire. So also spend some time, getting to know each other and answering some questions. And in about a minute or so, I'm going to break you up in the first group. And the question that I'd like to ask you in this group to come up with and to talk about is, what is your favorite climate-related artwork, art project, or an artist that you really admire for the work he or she or they have done with regards to climate action, climate awareness, climate justice? Talk about this in your group, get to know each other, exchange some ideas, and then when we bring you back, you have about 10 minutes for this little conversation, 10, 12 minutes. We'll see what sort of examples have come up with you. I'll stay in the main room. I think Merlijn is going to jump from little campfire to little campfire. So if you're stuck or anything, just come back to the main room and I can help you. For now, before we break up, are there any questions or any things we need to touch upon before we move to the next phase? Just wave your hands or be busy when you feel like you have a question. All right, it seems like we're good to go. Yes. I'm going to assign you to 3 different groups automatically, which means there's 5 people per group. Let's have a look how this works out. There you go. You should see a link. Welcome back, everyone. So, does anyone want to share maybe, or did anyone hear an example that they think is truly amazing, or something that they'd like to share with the group at large?
Shall I start?
Yeah, Diane, please.
Okay, we talked about several things, but I called the Embassy of the North Sea because they make a connection with between people and the nature of the sea or the fish or the shell or anything. But we also talked a bit about Babette. Oh, sorry. I wrote Babette Porcelein, but about the donut economy, like a principle or a way of working with change. There's also a beautiful, there's called a beautiful project Melting Ice Experience in the UK. Lucy knows more about that.
Yeah, it was Oliver Eliasson's melting ice structures outside the Tate Modern. Just that the sound of the ice cracking and just how cold it was, obviously, but just that transition over a certain time period, which makes it very visceral. Yeah, and there was something called the Hive, which I need to now look into. So yeah, we had a really interesting discussion.
Thank you so much. If you have links like to the Embassy of the North Sea, which I accidentally know about,
I do,
and which is a wonderful project, feel free to share them in the chat. I think these attempts to mingle, in this case, science and arts, to address the well-being of an ecosystem rather than one single thing or one single species. It's very inspirational. Thank you so much. From the other groups, is there any examples that popped up that you feel like deserve a worldwide audience?
Well, I can give two examples in our group. It was very nice to have one example about artificial coral reefs that were kind of designed by humans, but they're very beautiful, and the coral reef continue to grow on it. So you can visit it as a diver and so on, and it would help nature regenerate, but also bring people close to the beauty of nature. Because if you just preserve nature and you build a whole fence around it, people don't access it anymore. Well, you protect it, but you also lose an important way for people to connect to it. So I thought that is a great way to create nature and to create proximity of people to nature.
Yeah.
And another example was actually about to imagine the future. You know, a story about what if we are 50 years ahead. What is it like? You know, we can turn to Hollywood for this type of stories, but we also really need different artists without millions of budget who are just really thinking of what can we experience and what can we feel about the future when we use our imagination. So these were a few examples in our group.
Thank you so much, Merlijn. And in the chat, and I'm sorry, Chen, I hope I pronounce your name correctly, and I probably need some help with that. It's a beautiful name, but you mentioned the architecture of Talasamba, where there are some projects as well to protect and safeguard this UNESCO World Heritage Site, which is a threat because of climate change. So I see there's a lot of examples popping into the chat. Thank you so much. Feel free to leave your examples there. I'm going to mix you again, unless there's anyone who wants to raise his hand with an example that we definitely should hear, or just make some other way to attract my attention. I'm going to break you up in a different group this time, so we actually get a chance to meet everyone here around the campfire tonight and talk about our shared experiences and maybe exchange ideas and about what art can do. And this time I'd like to ask you in your group to think about the question, what are some of the characteristics that successful artworks related to climate and the climate emergency share? And are these different, maybe depending on where in the world you're from or the position you're from? So is there one best way for art to tackle the climate crisis? Or may this be different from place to place in the world, and maybe from the situations of people who are in a different position? So I'm going to break you up again in three different groups. Recreate the groups. That means that you may accidentally end up with one or two of the same ones. That's how random works, but at least one or two people will be different. Given that some people left, I may actually just create two rooms so that they're not too empty. And we'll see you back in 10 minutes again. What are some of the characteristics that successful artworks or projects related to the climate crisis share with each other? See you in 10 minutes. Welcome back again. I hope these groups, you ended up in a nice group, but I'm pretty sure you did, and I hope you had a wonderful conversation. Just bringing back maybe some of the trends that some of the things that you spoke about. Is there anyone who'd like to share maybe some of the characteristics or some of the shared characteristics of successful climate artworks or art projects? I can always appoint a volunteer.
Yeah, maybe Remco, can you summarize our conversation, or is that?
Shall I
can give it a try.
Oh.
So the conversation in our group revolved a little bit around the idea of, I guess, aesthetics in general, whether they are images of beauty or of the opposite of that, of destruction and of and which of those, or in what way, let's say, it's not either or, but in which ways these particular emotional responses to any type of sensory input, of course, not necessarily visual, but music and so forth, can move people towards either direct action or a change in themselves, in their attitudes towards the issue. Is that a fair short summary?
Yeah. No, it's a really searching for, there is a tension. I mean, there is a power of beauty, but there is also the courage to show the real face of things. You know, art can really have the courage to show you a reality that's usually a bit hidden or a bit behind the surface. And so that was our conversation.
And this may be just a question, because I don't know, literally I don't know, but you probably do. Does climate change have visual language? Is there a climate change aesthetics that may or may not be generally agreed upon?
Well, if you Google images and climate change, you see a lot of graphs going up with temperature rising, and of course storms like bad weather.
Yeah, and a lot of garbage pictures.
Plastic.
Yeah.
Icebergs melting down.
The ice bear.
Iconic. Yeah.
Polar bear. Yeah.
Yeah.
And is that the visual language we want, we want to have associated with climate change? Is that a, I'm just asking.
Yeah, of course you have these pictures, for instance, the seahorse with the stick to clean your ears with, and everybody knows that picture. They have a kind of iconic power, and it reaches mass people and a lot of people. It doesn't reach people who particularly love art. It reaches a lot of people, and it makes them aware of climate change. And of course, it's a good question. Is this the language you want to speak? But I think we need language in all kind of language, or art in all kind of languages and appearances to reach all kind of different people. I don't think there's one language or one way to reach people. Yeah.
I was thinking, I noticed that in all the examples we shared, there were no human, no people. There, it's icebergs, polar bears. It's all nature, but no effect on the human, on the how it affects us in daily life, or that kind of. So that's not what we think about, and not what we often see, I think.
Yeah.
It's a really important missing, because people don't connect to climate change because it's not associated with people.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe that's an important thing then. Yeah.
Does anyone know? Because I can imagine that of course Google, if you Google search something that has this very strong cultural bias, and may it be that there's no humans in the images because of the cultural bias of Google, coming from a relatively rich environment where climate change is indeed something that we think is unconnected to us, and that maybe it's in areas where it's more associated with, where people more directly see it. Do you know of examples where artworks that really involved humans and put humans central in the crisis?
I know one that's, I think you all know it. It's called Politicians Discussing Global Warming.
Yeah, that's a beautiful image. If you can find it, we can share that.
Yeah, shall I see if I can find it?
I mean, it's almost a cartoon. I mean, you have beautiful images that are really, really powerful. But I'm curious, Laila, you were in Algeria, is it? That's your where you live now. Is that correct? Algerie.
You need to unmute yourself.
Yeah,
yeah there you are.
Is it correct, Leila?
Yes, I think that she comes from Algeria. Yes, and she...
Yes, I'm in Algeria. I beg your pardon, I didn't.
Because I'm asking this.
Can you repeat the question, please?
If you live in a place,
yes.
Climate change really affects agriculture. It's really a human problem. You feel it, that it's becoming
yes.
dry, and that's different from the Netherlands. You know, we have nice warm summers, but we just enjoy it. You know, so it's not. We don't feel it as a threatening thing. Do you have images or artworks in Algeria where the human position with climate change, the battle, is shown?
I don't think that there are exhibitions or artworks in that sense, but there are works about the landscape, the transformation of the landscape, the transformation of the awareness about the climate changing, but they talk more about architecture and agriculture. I doubt that very much. There is no, as long as I know, there is no artists working on the subject. Yes.
Because that is, of
even
course,
at the university, we don't have specialization about these very, very accurate subjects. There is no real specialization, but it's more about engineering, about theology, culture, but not about art, unfortunately. Yes. Yeah.
Because, Jasper? Unmute.
Sorry.
I think that we need these new fields, these new research fields, this new specialization in art institutes. I think that there is a lack of knowledge, but we are more specialized in sociology and engineering at the university, for example.
Yeah, I mean, I believe the human face of climate change is the refugees. I mean, they represent the changing climate, and it is a tragedy that, for example, the Syrian war is not connected in the main audience. You mean, like the mainstream, it's not connected to the story of climate change, and in reality, it's totally connected, but not in the news, not in the story. It's all about violence, about religious extremism, and I think it's
politics. Yes.
I spoke with a researcher just 2 weeks ago who said it, a migration researcher who said that simply using the word climate refugee already downplays the impact of the climate, because virtually all refugees are driven from their homes because of climate associated risks, and calling them climate refugees makes it feel like, oh, it's a problem in their country which they couldn't fix, and that's why they come here, rather than this is something that we as humankind are responsible for, and they're not refugees, they're driven from their homes by the actions we take. And so that's, even words in that respect, I think, matter a lot, and distance and other people from ourselves.
Can somebody explain to me how the refugees are a product of climate change? Because I have not been exposed to that perspective.
Well, 4 years in a row in Syria, the crops failed. So there became shortage of food and a lot of shortage of water, and the access to water became a power struggle. So it was the government who controlled the water, and all the farmers who were out of their jobs, especially the younger men who were looking for work, they all went to the cities, because on the land they couldn't work anymore, because there was no money, there was no crops. So there was a lot of tensions in the city. Young people looking for work, that was destabilizing the society.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Well,
All
there's
right.
more factors. It's always complex.
It's very complicated, yeah.
Yeah, but it's an important contribution to the also in Tunisia. I mean, it was the shortage, the prices of bread that were rising that started what we call now the revolution.
Thank you, Merlijn. It's an interesting. I really marked down bigly that there are no humans in the images when you Google climate change, and I think that's a very a powerful message, as well as Leila, what you said about it being an engineering challenge and not a creative or artistic challenge or a human challenge. Thank you so much. Now, I want to break you up one last time in groups. I'm going to make 2 groups, and this time I would like to ask you, based on the little conversations that we have, imagine the future, right? A future where art contributes, plays a positive role in maybe solving the climate crisis, addressing climate justice or injustice. And what does that look like? What does it look like when art plays a role in the climate crisis? And maybe to make it more specific, what is a good approach to make art a force for good in the climate crisis? And if you have an example, of course, also share it. But if we want to take this forward, and I hope we can and we will, and we can give art a more central place in this challenge. What is an approach? What is a way to actually make this happen? I'm going to put you in little groups again. You know how this works now. Some people joined, some people left. So say hi to everyone, and I see you again in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Welcome back, everyone. While you were in your breakout rooms, I had a chat with I don't know if it's a friend. Yeah, let's call it a friend who joined for a while. He couldn't stay longer. He's a miller. I'm actually from Kinderdijk, which, if you know the Dutch UNESCO World Heritage Site, it's one of the oldest UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's a place that exists because it fights against the water, and it has done so for hundreds of years. And we had a little bit of a chat about what can you do as a miller actually in the future. I don't know. It brought me back to my roots. I'm not a miller. I never think about these old Dutch windmills that the world comes to see as being useful in the future, but it triggered something in my mind. I hope something got triggered in your heads as well. So how are we going to make art a force for good in the climate crisis? Who has the $1 million answer? Beth has, I see.
Well, Beth is, at least as your son is collecting, well, I think just the materials for an artist, the raw material for artworks out of what he is collecting. Was a beautiful story, Beth. Can you summarize?
My son is on the autism spectrum, and one of the things he loves to do is take apart machines, and he generates a lot of waste. Well, he moves it from other people's waste, and then it becomes waste in my home. And then it goes to my studio, and it becomes art supplies and art materials. And then I create things with them, and they just sort of live forever. Yeah.
And well, we're talking also about gardening. So it's nice, the connection with Miller. Gardening as relating to the physical, dimension, the world around us. But also in the conversation, I was stuck with an analogy. Beth, you started it with the anti-racism movement, that it started with connections on a very, let's say, neighborhood level of people just looking out for each other And later in the revolution, you need each other. You need the connections across color, or across rich and poor, or across the art world and the business world, and so on. So I feel we need to prepare for times where we really need each other. And how do we create a social fabric? So to create, and in that sense, a lot of artworks that are not focused on climate change are very beneficial to create a social fabric. So when we need to change, when we need to sacrifice things, I mean, when the Dutch need to move to Belgium or Germany, well, we need each other, you know, in these situations. And we don't need all the fights and social media hypes and distrust and so on that is so prominent right now.
Merlijn, I don't know if you agree, and it's not so relevant for at this moment, but aren't we in a small, like Patricia Kopachinskaya said, but it's really like we are in a rehearsal of that bigger crisis right now. Because, for example, at the moment I'm in quarantine because we had a positive case in my family, so I can't do shopping, but I've never had some friends drop a bottle of wine or bread or bake a cake in front of my house. So I really feel that this feels like a rehearsal for the crisis. We are much closer to each other, even though we're farther apart.
Yeah, indeed.
Thank you so much. Anyone else? How do we make art? Remco, I feel very tempted to ask you, because you're from Canada, which is the country most unlike the country I'm from. It's very big with a lot of nature, and very few people unlike ours. But I also remember that I once spoke with a Canadian museum director who said, "Did you know that one day there were dinosaurs in Canada?" And that when we actually show that there were dinosaurs roamed Canada, people understand climate change. Because they associate dinosaurs with sandy spaces. And if you show a dinosaur fossil in the forest, people immediately understand that the forest every day can go back to being a desert. So from that perspective, Remco, how would you make art a source for good in climate change? Sorry to ask the big question.
No, that's for the very specific Canadian context, that would be to hand the reins to the Indigenous artists in Canada. In the Indigenous population of Canada, of course, has massive storage of knowledge about the local ecology, and very localized, because there are a number of ecologies across a country of this size. And they are the ones who are the activists against, for instance, tar sand extraction, like getting oils out of, which is a horribly polluting, just to get oils that have seeped into sandy areas. Terribly polluting practice to extract it to begin with, and then of course the use of the oil after that. So Indigenous peoples have been at the forefront of activism in this sense, and their art practice is so interwoven with their daily lives that the distinction between art making and not art making is really not that relevant in that sense. And because there is such a connection to the natural world and the natural resources, in a way, almost all the making from the different peoples can be said to somehow address because they are like in northern Canada, the Inuit people are the first people who are suffering the consequences of in a very real livelihood way, in terms of not being able to have their regular practices of caring for their families, caring for themselves. So that would be the answer, I guess, for Canada specifically.
I just love that you made this this statement about art not having really a distinction from other things in life. And that just, in my mind, just opens up the universe for just every breath we take and every step we take being creative and powerful and targetable to an end.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Is there anyone else who feels like they, from their perspective, or I'm thinking Leila maybe, or Chen from your perspective, which is also from a very different perspective than maybe some of the northerners here, how we can make art a force for good in the climate discussions.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes,
absolutely.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
So my point of view is would be a big space within this climate change. How can we see the public space, and especially where happens art manifestations, exhibitions where people can meet together? How can we reinvestigate this public space in the city to make more interesting for people? It's my point of view.
Thank you so much, Leila. Anyone else want to add something?
well, I just want to explain a little bit of the, well, we have a conversation now, and we have also a big ambition to bring this type of thinking into places where scientists and policymakers are actually designing things. So I would love to bring that up, because the type of things that I heard tonight, not just inspiring, but I think they're essential to be heard outside of maybe our well, our own group and our own environment. So this is also the reason why Jasper and I built the notion of what art can do. Already this sentence hits a kind of button with people who are very focused on solution, of efficiency, of making things work. They have a busy mindset. It's totally different. They would never have a conversation like this 1.5 hours. So we are looking for a translation of the space for dreaming. And Leila, you just mentioned spaces. Where is the space? Where do we meet? Where do we start creating? Where can we also share our doubts, share our searching mentality, share our, let's call it the artist mindset? When can this artist mindset become contagious? And also among scientists, among policymakers, among politicians, you know? So this is the thing. Can we build a Trojan horse and bring it to other places outside of the art world, but inside there is the power of art? So that is what art can do, at least our well, intention behind it. And well, we have already an international network, but it would be excellent and lovely to see if we can keep also the connection between well, with you guys.
Thank you, Merlijn. Yeah, if you're interested in this, it's whatartcando.org, and it's very, we're doing this, I've learned this week, we're doing this in the 90s style of the internet. We just began before it was polished and done. So it's unpolished and undone, but it shows, I think, an ambition and a statement, and some of the work that you've done here, or some of the examples that you shared, we'll include them in the website. We'll work with the artists and to give them the proper credits and show their work. as well as we'll try and create this week a little article about our conversation and some of the things that you shared and that stood out about what art can do for the climate. I think I feel that thank you so much. And I feel to sort of like round it off, and I don't want to look at anyone, but there's two people who started with some music, and maybe we can end with a song.
Yeah, that would be great, Jan. And before I also say goodbye to everyone, if you like to contribute to whatartcando.org with, for example, research like finding great stories, great artworks, or writing about it, helping us build the platform, or connecting us to people who organize conferences or whatever, I made a kind of type form. I call it for volunteers because, well, there is no big budget behind it yet. But if you think I have a few hours a month or maybe a few hours a week, please write down, well, it's a few questions, and we hope to really include you and build a group. We have already 30 people who want to contribute. So it's also a nice challenge to involve everyone and start building this together. Well, I really look forward, and I hope we can get this off the ground and build something. Yeah.
Thank you all very much, and let's listen to one more song. And thank you so much.
Na kwela nyona nuke mawa akwela nyona nuke tutu mawa na kwela nyona nyalema agoke mujoje ma nyalema ata mulekoloji nyalema agoke mujoje ma nyalema adamu fomiawo. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening. Thanks everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day or evening. See you all soon, I hope.
Bye everyone.
Bye bye.
Bye everyone. Bye.